Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Need Some Introduction. In today's episode, we are breaking down the fourth episode of Your Friends and Neighbors, Season 2 on Apple TV, and discussing a few other things I want to bring up along the way. The number one thing I want to bring up for anybody, I've been teasing this for a month, and I finally pulled the trigger and launched the Patreon, Sona. It's out there.
Nice.
So check the show notes. A few people have already subscribed. If
great.
you'd like to subscribe, everything's free for now. There's going to be a lot of unique content on there. A lot of it's just stuff I've been seeing. I'm already starting to do a review of a film that is called Mother Mary with Anne Hathaway from David Lowery, which I liked very much, but it's not a mainstream movie by any stretch of the imagination. So kind of things that I think are going to be niche that I don't think are going to be mainstream. And maybe just other shows that maybe are mainstream, but I'm just kind of watching on my own might be in there. But the main content we have there right now, we are continuing to rewatch the Christopher Nolan filmography, and already his version or a review of his version of Insomnia is there. And we just did the first Batman film, Batman Begins, and that'll be publishing very shortly. So subscribe if you'd like to get that additional content. Everything's free, as I mentioned, and always free to subscribe. Some of that content will be paywalled eventually, but for now, enjoy it and give me your feedback there. You can also communicate with each other through those Patreon tools. And joining me for the conversation, already introduced briefly there, Sona. How are you, Sona? It was my daughter's birthday yesterday, actually. The little birthday party.
No way,
here.
I missed it. Oh my gosh. Happy birthday to your daughter.
Oh, no problem. It was a lot of fun. She had a few of her friends over. They played with the cat. We have a new cat. That was one of her birthday presents. Part of the reason that we've been discussing the cat briefly here on the podcast in the past couple episodes. And she's enjoying the cat. The cat's sleeping with her every night. But I did say, I think we all have a mild allergy to the cat, I have to say. Except for, I don't think my daughter has had any allergic. Me and my wife, we are both dealing with some mild allergies, which may or may not be related to the cat, considering the current weather.
Probably are.
but probably, I mean, minimally, they are exacerbated by the cat, if not primarily by the cat.
Remind me your daughter's birth year. I'm putting it into my calendar right now so I don't forget again.
She's 11, 2015.
2015. Thank you. Wow. 11 is full on tween.
Oh, it's rough. It's getting there.
Is it?
Okay. Question I have for you. Start things off before we get into this show, which brief spoiler here. I don't know how long this conversation is going to be given the content here, but I do have some questions which might extend the conversation. Although this is very much a middle episode of this season of show. And maybe we could discuss how slowly or quickly we feel the context is, or I should say the plot is advancing. But I had a question for you. My main question today, believe it or not, that I wanted to talk to you about has nothing to do with Your Friends and Neighbors, or even tangentially. It has to do with this new Michael Jackson movie that's coming out for a few reasons.
I don't know anything about a new Michael Jackson movie.
Oh my God, Sona, you're the only one who doesn't know about this.
I've been living under a rock.
There's a new Michael Jackson film. There's been some controversy about this. It's just called Michael. And it's already opened overseas a couple of days ago. It's like setting records around the world, as you would expect with a Michael Jackson biopic. The opening here in the United States is going to be one of the biggest openings in the spring, not like compared to the Avengers or something, but definitely for a biopic. Anyway, this film is going to make like $1 billion around the world is what it comes down to. And this opening weekend will be $250, $300 million. Who knows? Something crazy like that. The question I had, and I guess you answered my question, is that, and maybe it's still valid regardless, my daughter and her friends cannot wait to go see this Michael Jackson movie. Apparently, your son was not aware of this at all, but maybe more broadly.
No, he probably knows. It probably just hasn't come up between us yet.
Yes.
He knows a lot of things that I don't know about until I directly ask, which will surely be a lesson for the teenage years. But he's a big Smooth Criminal fan. He likes the video and the tilt, and he tries to imitate that. So I bet he does know about it.
That's a good point. He's actually seems to be very savvy in that way. So he probably does.
Yeah, too much YouTube will do that. Yeah.
Yeah, the kids know everything via YouTube for sure. So my question, I think, still may be valid, which is I've been honestly fascinated with the enduring legacy of Michael Jackson. Of course, he was massively popular. And of course, and talented for sure.
You can't deny that.
For sure. And that is part of that legacy for sure. And of course, I honestly think that the controversies and the strange aspects of his life are part of what makes him enduring in a way. But exactly what you were describing, it amazes me that these kids today are as fascinated by Michael Jackson. And I don't think it is just like, well, their parents forced them to listen to Thriller or something. There's
No,
something,
I certainly haven't.
right. There's something just innately compelling about him as a figure, which I don't think, I don't think I appreciated that about him. And that's become very complicated for me, obviously, as time's
It's
gone
so
by.
complicated.
Yeah, so that's kind of where the starting point of my conversation with you is what do you think? I mean, these are unanswerable questions, by the way, so no pressure in your answer. But what do you think makes him so compelling? Not only like in the moment, of course. There's a lot of people who were like massively successful in that era of like MTV first launching. No one more so than Michael Jackson, of course. But I feel like even though we've seen a lot of biopics, and Madonna, for example, that biopic does like now look like it is with starring the girl from what's her name, Julia Garner. It looks like that's actually going to happen now. Even they've been teasing it for years. So of course she's another one of these really iconic people from the era who still endures as a huge icon. And there's been biopics in the past few years that obviously are cashing in on these hugely famous catalog. But I feel like he's still now, not only in the time, but still now is so much more massive than any of those others. And, again, unanswerable. What made him so compelling then? And why do kids now still are utterly fascinated by him?
Yeah, I think most celebrities, or at least it's not uncommon for celebrities to be very charismatic, but I think there's something about him that is just really compelling to watch, whether it's charisma or something else. I remember years and years ago, there was kind of like a behind the scenes documentary during the later part of his career where they were showing a dance rehearsal. And I am not a person, I don't really know good dancing from bad. I can tell if something is remarkably bad or remarkably good. And I know he is a remarkably good dancer, but there was something, not even being a huge Michael Jackson fan, I just was like flipping through, or it was a promo or something. I know I didn't see the whole movie, but whatever the clip was, I was drawn to it because the dancing was so compelling to watch. It was so on another level from anything that you would generally see, that even not being a huge Michael Jackson fan and not being a huge dance fan, I still found myself stopping to watch it because it was just so fascinating. Maybe that together with being a child star. And I don't know how much your daughter or that generation knows about him as a child star, right, and the difficulties of his father and stuff like that. But I do find that very interesting, the whole idea of like a stage parent that's a monster kind of, and how you survive that. And then of course he's very prolific. I guess all of these things may be combined together. What do you think?
Yeah, that's what's fascinating. All the things you said are absolutely true. And you think about how people now, like all these like Disney, I don't even know this, like, I'll see, oh, there's another one of these teen pop icons that gets really popular. And for 3 or 4 of her albums are massively anticipated. And maybe they peter off over time. But sometimes these, whether it's a Miley Cyrus or something, have these huge careers. And I don't even know that they are child stars. And I'm like, oh, it's because these kids were watching them on Disney. And then they got an album deal 10 years later. And now they're like in their 20s or early 20s. And then they have this pop career. And then maybe they become celebrities of another kind. They have a TV show, or they end up a host on anyway. So it's a pattern that obviously I've seen over time. And I didn't think about it in Michael Jackson terms because I was so young when Michael Jackson became a megastar. He just emerged that way. And then as I got older is only when I realized, oh, he was like a huge star when he was a little kid. And then people saw him grow up. And then he became the biggest star in the world. So it's like all the people who were huge fans of him 15 years ago when they were little kids, and now they grew up with him. Now they're huge stars, but now their kids love him as well and then MTV happens, and then that introduces them to like a much broader audience. So it's like this iconic moment. The fascination I have now is these kids who don't have any of that context, and they just watch Thriller, and now they're obsessed. And I'm like, wow, it's just something compelling about it. And I think Thriller is such an iconic aspect to it still to this day, because I think that maybe Smooth Criminal would be like a big hit now on TikTok or something, or maybe some of these other videos, people be like, oh yeah, Michael Jackson, I know who that is, but it wouldn't be like iconic. I think what it is like that anchor point is Thriller, and Thriller even now is utterly compelling. And when I say Thriller, I don't mean just the Thriller video. I mean all of that, like Beat It and Billie Jean, and the whole project of Thriller is still like such a perfect pop creation that it is like for all of history will be. And then I think at this moment is probably maybe the perfect moment to put this out, because you consider 10 years ago, I feel like even when Michael Jackson was still alive, his last couple of records didn't do very well. So, I mean, I think he felt like, that was from then. But of course, we're in the middle of this moment where like the 80s, everything is 80s, right? Like people cannot get past the 80s. And what's more 80s than Michael Jackson and Thriller, right? So it really seems like a perfect moment for it. But it just fascinates me that kids, I'm not even kidding, like last year, how many people came into our neighborhood to trick or treat and were dressed as some version of Michael Jackson. And when I say that, I don't mean like hundreds of them. I mean a handful of them. Right. And every year there's like a handful of kids dressed up like Michael Jackson. This Halloween, it's going to be like half of the kids are going to be dressed like Michael Jackson. Right. It's a pretty crazy phenomena but let's talk about the movie. I just want to tell you about this because you're not even aware of it. But the amazing thing about this movie, it's been in production for years.
Wait, who's playing Michael Jackson?
It's Michael Jackson. This is actually, I forget the person's name. He's apparently does an excellent impression of Michael Jackson, actually a relative, like a nephew or something of Michael Jackson. And he's been getting very good reviews, not only for the vocal performance, but for like the dance moves and everything. Like this is the scenes, parts of the movie are shot in IMAX 3D. So you basically, I think that's going to be a huge selling point. People imagining seeing him in concert on a stage, and someone who's doing a very good impression of him. And by the way, the reviews have been very negative, but the critics are all just like, but when the music's playing and he's on stage, it's, and of course, people are there for the spectacle. That's really what they're there for. And I think about Bohemian Rhapsody, another film that got terrible reviews, but won Academy Awards. And people were all there to see the recreation of the Live Aid concert, right? That's what they were there for. And they showed up, and that movie made $800 million, right? So that's what happens. And this is probably going to be even bigger than that. But but it's really fascinating about this very troubled production. This originally was supposed to be a 3-hour movie. It's been cut to a 2-hour movie. There's a whole hour of the movie that takes place. This version of the movie ends with the end of the Bad tour, right? So it starts when he's a kid. It goes through the Bad tour, and but there's a whole hour of the film that was excised, which theoretically we're going to get another film. They say there's going to be a part 2. I wonder if we're ever going to see that, considering that his legacy gets much muddier beyond that point, obviously. And so it's interesting that was cut out. Second of all, no Janet Jackson, the most famous sibling, is not in the film, like does not exist as a character in the film at all.
Wow.
So that's another very interesting thing that happened. Second of all, Diana Ross was in the film. The actress performed scenes. She was in the entire film, completely cut out because Diana Ross did not want herself represented in the film. This is approved by the family. So there's a lot of the siblings that are still alive, obviously, and a lot less of anything that could be considered, problematic. Even like a lot. I mean, apparently, I haven't seen the film yet, but apparently they do reference the beginning of his obsession with plastic surgery. But really, it's just like he has a nose job. So they bring a little hint. It's like the film, apparently, this is what people are critical of. It hints at trouble to come without in any way dealing with what is driving this person psychologically, which, of course, one of the most fascinating people of all times has to be considered, right? Just because of the success he had, but then all of the trauma and all of the strange behaviors and his fascination with him having a zoo in his house and his fascination with Peter Pan, someone who never wanted to grow up. And of course,
how about Bubbles, the chimpanzee?
Of course. And all things that are just like all the weirdness is not included. And how can you talk about Michael Jackson and just have like a rags to riches story and success? And here he is at the peak of his success. He does the bad tour, end of film. I'm like, wow, like that seems like not at all, other than like, the fan service of seeing some of these performances really perfectly rendered. I mean, if you see the trailer, and I recommend you watch it, the performer doing the Thriller scene, like not only perfectly looks like Michael Jackson, not only like recreating the shooting of the Thriller video itself perfectly, the lighting, everything, but the dance moves, everything is just spot on. Which to me, I say, can't we just like clean up all those YouTube videos that we've been watching for years and put that on the screen? I would watch that in a movie theater. Why not?
Yeah.
I guess that's pretty much what we're getting here, more or less. But it is strange. It is a strange phenomena and also bizarre that you would make this film and like cut out all of, potentially for me, this is my opinion, obviously maybe not for people who want to only see the most simplified version or the most fan servicey version of that. Or for example, a movie you want to be able to take your kids to, maybe this is what they got, and maybe that's why the film will be a huge phenomena. But the version of the story I want to see is like not anywhere present in this representation of it. So an interesting project. I guess it's to sell records, and I'm sure it will. So I know your husband is a huge fan of Michael Jackson. Has that become more complicated as he's gotten older?
Yeah, I think it has. It's funny, we were talking last week about J.K. Rowling and separating the art from the artist, but it's obviously more difficult to do that when you're talking about actions rather than words. So I do think both of us are of the opinion that you can't deny his brilliance as a musical artist, and that he was very damaged and very troubled, and that there are a lot of very upsetting things that you hear, even though it's hard to 100% know for sure what happened. It does seem like it's very likely that a lot of bad stuff happened.
Yeah, I mean, my opinion of that, obviously these are allegations and it's impossible to know for sure everything that happened there. But I have to say, I'm just going to say this, and I hope I don't offend any Michael Jackson fans, and I don't know if this was your opinion too, Sona, in the time, like in the moment when these allegations first came out, I was not like, I can't believe this. I was pretty young. The first allegations came out when I think we were in high school, and he was still very near the peak of his fame. And, of course, and then became much more prevalent, and the court cases dragged on. This was like all towards the end of, maybe the last 10 years of his life. That all became he became more known for that. But I remember when the first allegations came out, which is right around 89 or 90, I think, right after the Bad tour, that I was not like, I am so shocked that these allegations are being done. I felt like I was, and in our friend group, it was like, yeah, duh. Like it was not shocking at all. And I want to be clear about something. I don't know if everything in the allegations, the worst of it, are true, but I would say that the most generous read I have of all of that is that he still had extremely improper relationships with those kids, regardless of how far those relationships went in the sexual nature. It was extremely inappropriate, the relationships he had with those kids. And it was his fame and his money and his, fame, celebrity status that allowed him to continue to have that. Because if that was your neighbor, and I'm not saying even if there was no actual sexual activity, if that's your neighbor and it's like, hey, I want to have like a giant bed where like the six of us are all going to like have a slumber party this weekend. If that was not Michael Jackson, you'd be like, that is never happening, not in 100 years. But it happened all the time. And that's just crazy that was acceptable because he was famous. Like, it's just very strange.
Yeah, I think also maybe it gets complicated because of his own stunted development, that even when things are objectively wrong, we don't see it the same way as like your neighbor doing something like that.
Right.
Because you know that he's such a disturbed person. And so even though there are certain things that are objectively right and objectively wrong, regardless of the history you bring to it, it does color it a bit.
Sure. And of course, I mean, and that's the other thing that's fascinating about all of this is that I think that to a person, when you push them on, well, no, regardless of how bad this is, whether it's a 100 out of 100 or whether it's a 50 out of 100, this is all improper. And if you really push those people, they're like, yeah, but I want him to make more music, right? And that's the key. That's kind of part of that, what he got away with for so long. And not just him. I'm talking about this is what comes with privilege of fame and wealth, is that it's just like, but I want something from this person, so I'm going to have to look the other way, right? And then the question just becomes like, how problematic was that? But I mean, we can take that out of it and even that aspect of it, and it's still extremely problematic, right? There's like the plastic surgery and the drug abuse and things that we fully know about that were not part of this image that he created. And of course, it's all being swept under the rug here as well to just kind of do this rehabilitation of his persona. And that is fascinating in and of itself as just a cultural, like what you were touching on. If this film becomes a phenomena, and of course, there's the MJ Broadway show as well. And it's only
which I've heard is excellent, by the way.
Again, yeah, I'm sure, because it's just like performing the music, which of course is excellent. And it's also massively popular. But it's just a fascinating thing for me to see that anybody else, you think about the whole Neverland documentary from a few years ago on HBO and how people were like, people were saying like, are not allowed to play his music on the radio anymore. And that's 6 or 7 years ago. And since then, we have the MJ musical and now this movie that's going to be a blockbuster. And it's just like, this is like someone who's uncancelable, basically, right?
Well, that's what I was about to say. I think there's a more interesting question, not more interesting, but an interesting question about, for lack of a better term, canceling people in our society and who gets canceled and who doesn't, and who gets a pass and who, like, over some minor infraction, you never hear from them again, right? It's like, and how times and standards change as well on like what is worth canceling. I think it's a complicated question. Like in the arena of politics, which is completely different than what we're talking about, there is like a joke going around about Howard Dean, which, many people may not even remember Howard Dean, but was a strong Democratic contender for president years ago. And the guy screamed like a Muppet once, and we never heard from him again because we all thought it was like a weird girly scream. And that was it for him. Right. And now look, the things we excuse.
Oh, exactly. I mean, there's that whole thing where Obama's been going around being like, could you imagine? Could you imagine I had done any of these things?
The guy wore a tan suit and nobody let up on him for a month.
Yep. And yeah, it's a different world. And my part of that, but that's the other thing as well. I do think, especially with politics, that we are in a different world there for sure. But the Michael Jackson thing fascinates me for the fact that, exactly like you mentioned, there are celebrities out there, and I don't mean like R. Kelly, which, obviously is very, he has been canceled and he does not get played. And he's like,
I don't know. He's touring right now, isn't he? Oh, no, I'm thinking of Chris Brown. Sorry.
Yes. Well, yeah, that's a good example of somebody, I guess, because that's not as bad for sure. Not as bad.
Yeah.
The whole allegations against R. Kelly. But his, he has been canceled where even like on Spotify, since most of streams on Spotify actually come from their curated playlists, it's pretty amazing that they just basically, it's not that you could definitely search for R. Kelly and play his music if you choose to, but Spotify basically has it on none of their promoted playlists. And the idea that being like, this is another just separate digression about how the algorithm like really decides what we listen to now, and how Michael Jackson obviously has not been demonetized by those algorithms for whatever reasons, but it's pretty fascinating. They showed the Spotify streams for R. Kelly where they were like, some of his most popular songs had hundreds of thousands of streams per day. and like collectively had millions of streams per day on his. And then once Spotify is just like, we're not putting him on promoted lists, but you could search for it and play a song because you searched for it. And he went down to his most popular songs now have like tens of thousands of streams. Like he's literally gets like less than a tenth of the streams he used to get before. And part of that's the audiences obviously rejected him, but part of it is just like the algorithms ignoring it. But all of this goes to say that the fame of Michael Jackson was like too big for these same people at the exact same time, historically, talking about whether we are going to cancel this person or not, that they're like, he's too big to cancel because, he's too popular, basically. And then second of all, the fact that because the algorithm's just like, no, every Halloween, Thriller is going to be our number one song on Spotify, which of course it is. And that still remains the case now. Like they've never turned that off. And of course, there's a whole generation of kids now who are going to watch this movie. And 20 years from now, they're going to find out about the allegations and be like, oh my God, I didn't know any of that. And we're doing it again, right? We're just erasing all of that history again. And it's not the first time, and it won't be the last time. Oh, one thing I do want to say as a recommendation, which is less problematic because you don't have to think about all these other things. This was available on Paramount Plus last year, and I actually checked it this morning because I was anticipating bringing it up in this conversation. There's a documentary, which unfortunately is not streaming anymore. You have to rent it now, but maybe it'll pop up on streaming again. But I think it was made for Paramount Plus, or at least they owned it. So it was convenient to watch there. But it was called Thriller 40. Did you happen to watch this, Sona?
I don't think so.
Anyway, it's a documentary about the making of Thriller. It's 40 years later, and they're interviewing everybody who's involved. Quincy Jones still alive at the time. Smokey Robinson's in it. Stevie Wonder, of course, Lionel Richie, who of course worked with him on this briefly. So all these famous people are in it, but it's about the making of Thriller and everything. It's like, the planning of it, coming off of Off the Wall. Record sales at that moment in time were actually going down. The record label had anticipated Off the Wall had sold 7 million copies, which was a massive success. And they were anticipating selling only 4 million copies of Thriller, believe it or not. No one thought it was going to be that big. The shooting the videos, Michael Jackson put in some of his own money because they didn't want to spend too much money promoting things. And then, of course, the thing is an utter phenomena. And I think that Thriller, this is my personal opinion. I know people love that album. I actually prefer Off the Wall. I've had this conversation with your husband before. I prefer Off the Wall because Off the Wall is more cohesive as an album. The Thriller is like so schizophrenic from song to song. It doesn't have any kind of continuity and this is actually explained in the Thriller documentary that Michael Jackson had said, first of all, he was annoyed, like so many of us are, that he calls out, I think, like rumors as an album of being like, why can't albums be like that, where every song is good instead of being like, one song is a single and everything else is bad, right? And I'm like, yes, we all have asked that question. But his goal with Thriller was to have every single song be like a song you wouldn't skip, could be a single. And of course, that's exactly what we end up with, right? Almost every track on the album gets released as a single. And second of all is that he also says that he wants it to be like a different genre for every song. Like, so the lead-off single for Thriller is The Doggone Girl Is Mine, which is an awful song, by the way, my opinion. But it's not like,
Thriller?
Well, this has
I'm looking that up right now. That's on Thriller?
That's on Thriller. It was their lead-off single from Thriller, believe it or not. Billie Jean was the second single of Thriller.
Wow. I thought that The Girl Is Mine came much later. Huh.
No, see? Same thing.
I would have said it's Wanna Be Starting Something. So
that's like his third single, actually. Oh, no. I'm sorry. Beat It. Beat It came after Thriller. So yeah, it was Billie Jean and Beat It. They were back-to-back ones. The Doggone Girl Is Mine did not go to number one, but it went to number two, Sona. That's a terrible, terrible song. And it went to number two. Crazy. But anyway, the reason I mentioned that is because in the documentary, he's actually talking in this interviews about reaching out to Paul McCartney because he wanted to have like, what would be a song that would be a big hit, like on the easy listening stations. And then he wants to have, so that's the genre of song that he's emulating there. And of course,
I love Say, by the way. That's neither here nor there, but
which is on the Paul McCartney album. That was like, that was the deal. Like Paul McCartney goes, I'll do this one with you. You do that one with me. But a lot of people think that was on Thriller because I think that went to number one, like within the run of Thriller, because those two albums came out within, a year of each other. And Thriller, I mean, the albums came out like within more than a year, I think, between the two of them. But Thriller was spinning out singles for 2 years. So it was just like on the radio constantly for 2 years. Oh, but anyway, so the documentary, which I do recommend, is about making Thriller, about writing those songs. And there's like this incredible scene going back to the idea, like, for example, Human Nature. By the way, I don't know if you knew this, another piece of trivia here for you, Sona, but the band on Thriller is Toto. It's the band Toto. And Human Nature was written by the lead singer of Toto. And you actually hear his version of Human Nature, with his own vocals and the keyboards. It's like, it's almost identical, like, minus the vocals. It's nearly identical to Michael Jackson's version, even the way he performs the vocals, right? But the reason I mentioned that is because Michael Jackson also wrote some of his biggest hits. And for me, there's two really amazing sequences in the documentary. One was when he's writing Billie Jean, and it's just him at a keyboard with a cassette player playing, and he doesn't have all the lyrics, of course. So he's just kind of like improvising sounds and stuff, and like doing his like kind of vocal falsetto things, just ideas he has. And it's just him at a keyboard writing the song. And it's just like, wow, this is incredible. Like, it's just that moment of like seeing someone write one of the greatest songs of all time in the moment. It's just astounding to hear it, right? So that's the first one. It really talks or shows what a genius he is. And for me, Billie Jean is so much better than anything else on the album, although I like Want to Be Starting Something's a great song also. But
which is, by the way, in my defense, the first track on the album. And
yes, the first track, yes. And so do recommend that doc. Oh, the other revelatory moment for me is I was not an MTV kid, by the way. My parents didn't buy cable, so I would just watch cable TV randomly at other people's houses. So I was not like sitting around waiting with bated breath for everything to come on. And they show the behind the scenes of making the Beat It video. And then I was watching it when I'm watching this documentary. And then after they're showing how he made the video, and then they just play the video straight through. And I got to tell you, like, when they get to the end of the sequence and they're like doing the fake dance / fight, and then they all start dancing and choreograph with each other, I was like so thrilled. I was like, this is incredible. And I thought, like, watching this, like having the experience of watching it again with new eyes in the documentary, I actually had that moment of being transported and being like, God, of course, if I was watching the Beat It video for the first time and I was like 8 years old, this would be so iconic in my life. I'm like, of course it is, right? Because it still has nearly that impact on me as a middle-aged man, right? So anyway, and so my recommendation, check out Thriller 40, which is an incredible documentary, just documenting in great detail the making of this album. And like I said, it allows you to very much not deal with the problematic aspects of the story because it's just about making this album, which an album that pretty much everybody loves. All right, Sona, something that not everyone's going to love, not me anyway, the 4th episode of Your Friends and Neighbors. What was your general opinion of this?
I didn't like it as much as last week, but I still liked it a lot more than the first 2 episodes.
I did not mind watching this. And the craziest thing about this episode, Sona, I have to tell you, my favorite parts of this episode was just the show. It's such a schizophrenic show for me to watch and frustrating in so many ways. And the reason the schizophrenic aspect of it is the just hanging out and talking about these midlife crisis moments were my favorite aspects of this episode of the show, which is exactly the things I've been complaining that the show has too much of. So it's so weird that now all of a sudden the thing that worked for me in this episode was that. But then I just think about the show overall and I still get frustrated because I'm like, I really don't know what story this show is trying to tell at this point.
I think the show doesn't know. And also what is ironic for me is I am so ambivalent about the storylines that feature the female characters.
Yes.
I want to like them. Theoretically, there are things I should like about them, but they are just not landing for me. I mean, I should be all over this perimenopause subplot, right? Like it should resonate, but I find it annoying. The sister, I mean, I wish her the best, but like it's just not doing anything for me. And, I already went on a tirade about the daughter last week. So
the title of this episode was, I'm looking for it now. It has something to do with the Seder, the bread of affliction, which of course is the matzah. I mean, not of course, but that's what, I mean, I don't know much about Passover. Apologies to everybody.
They taught you a lot in this episode.
They did. I was going to say that. I'm like, it's amazing to me that, of course, just from like living in this region and watching a lot of movies that explore Jewish families, because I don't have, much exposure to this culture in general, that, we know what Seder is and the Passover holiday in general. But I don't know if I've seen I've definitely seen movies where it's like people are going to Seder, but I've never seen like this like breakdown of the whole ritual of Seder, which I thought was very interesting.
Yeah, I'm a little bit more familiar, I think, from living in the city for as long as I have. But it was fun to see it because I don't think it's something that's typically shown. Although I did feel a little bit like I was being taught a lesson about Passover and Seder, which I didn't love, but maybe someone less exposed to it might appreciate.
I thought they spent too much time on it, although I did appreciate it, first of all, just because, as I mentioned, I hadn't seen it before in this detail anyway. So I did find that kind of fun. But I really felt it was a blown opportunity, especially considering how much time is spent in that setting. Because in general, this is another cliche that I really like, by the way, having a situation where, like, for example, you're at a wedding or you're at a funeral or you're at a Seder, right? And everybody has to be on their best behavior because, of course, we have to keep up appearances, but there's something boiling under the surface. It really seems like, again, this might just be my own expectations, but I wanted to see something like that happen. And I guess you have it because Ash is like, Coop, sit next to me. But again, the Coop character, and I hate to, again, this is just how I feel about the whole entire show, but we have this performance, which is charismatic. The John Hamm performance is a charismatic person, obviously, and compelling in and of himself. But I don't know if this show understands who Coop is because he's just kind of rolling his eyes. But then a minute later, he's just like, man, in his narration, he's like, my goose is cooked. Like I'm on the edge of losing everything. And then he's just kind of sitting out there and the show doesn't address that tension between what he's presenting and what theoretically is happening internally. And it's so weird that the show doesn't use that, which is what the whole juice of the show should be. It's very odd.
It's like it dances around it. Wasn't there a conversation with Lou, right? Where she says, what are you even doing? And
right.
And then there's another conversation, I can't remember who it's with, where he was like, oh, I was so much happier after I gave up the grind of being a finance guy, right? Wasn't that this episode as well? And you kind of think, but were you and why? Like, let's talk about that.
Yes.
But they don't actually go there.
Yeah, the show never, I mean, I guess that's what I'm coming down to at this point with the show. In season 1, I thought it was thematic that he is in denial of his own motivations in his own actions. And now it's become, and a lot of shows do this, by the way. Once the formula is set, instead of being like, okay, like now let's explore that, that just becomes, well, yeah, that's a given. And I'm like, what's a given? Like, why is he doing this? Like, what? I need you to explain that to me, right? And then if I understood his psychology, then the show becomes more compelling. A perfect example of where this is done well, of course, and I'm going to say this for the 5,000th time that people have used this example, but in Breaking Bad.
I was about to say the same thing. Yeah.
You understand Walter White's psychology, and then you know, like when things are going good, and then you get excited, like, oh, finally, things are working out for him. And then there's that moment when you're like, oh my God, he's going to throw it all away. And you know it, you see it coming. because we understand what is motivating him. And here it really feels like
Coop do finally explicitly say it, but like years later, right?
Right. But I mean, I love the fact that, this is just the way Gilligan writes in general, that he's not going to say it overtly until later on. But here, I don't need him to say it overtly. I just need to understand what is driving him. And the fact that, like you mentioned, you have Barney asking him directly, why are you doing this? And he's like, I don't know. This is in episode 2, I believe, or episode 1 of this season. And then, of course, like you have Lou directly saying to him, like, what the hell are you doing? And it's like, yes, what the hell are you doing? And why are you making the decisions that you're making? It doesn't add up, honestly. And yet it's still, because the story itself is compelling, it keeps us watching. That being said, I have loved the Marsden character so far, Ash, so far on this show, so far. And I really did not like this chaotic representation of him here. I like the fact that he is like the coolest guy in the room. And again, this is my taste, especially if it's like, no, he's actually a nervous wreck underneath, a people pleaser, constantly gauging himself, but he's presenting this, like seeing him just suddenly become totally chaotic. Hey, let's do drugs. I'm going to scream at you on the phone, from scene to scene, being a different person in this particular episode. That really concerned me, because that doesn't make him an interesting character. That makes me feel like he is a chaotically written character, like every other character on the show, which I don't like anyway, right? Like Mel, I guess we just excuse her behavior because she's in perimenopause. Like, what's the Marsden character create? Is he menopausal also?
You know what? I actually didn't mind that development of his character. For whatever reason, I feel it's realistic.
I mean, part of that, I think, could be an interesting character detail. It could be interesting if this guy's like the master of the universe, and then we see him in a chaotic moment, and maybe he's got a mental issue, right? Like maybe he's manic depressive or something. So there could be aspects of it that would make it interesting. If, like, I think part of my trepidation is I have concerns with how all the characters are written in the show. And here's a character that I like, that feels to be like a new center for the show if they wanted to reorganize itself. And I'm like, oh, don't do the same. Like him too. Like it's just going to be another one of these chaotic characters. I think that disappointed me.
Fair, but I love the moment where Coop shows up in his kitchen and he says, "What are you doing here?"
Yeah, well, I mean, at least that turned into
You've got to be kidding me, right? And he goes, "Yeah."
I would have preferred if they didn't put the actual nail on the head of that. And then, of course, there's a version of it where it is just him completely manipulating Coop, and he would be like calm, cool, and collected when Coop showed up, which would be a more fun way of presenting that, I think, for me, anyway. But I have concerns. I have concerns about the direction this story is going in. And I couldn't wait to ask you this question, Sona. You're like, well, at least Liv is not coming back on this show. I'm like, oh yes, she is, Sona.
I know.
Oh, yes, she is. I think last week you're like, well, at least we're not going to see that character anymore. I'm like, nope, we're going to see a lot of her for the rest of the season.
Maybe it's just something about whoever is writing these female characters, but they are not landing the plane.
Speaking of these female characters, let's just round them up briefly and talk about them. So
their storylines suck, so why not?
They do. I mean, it really is. This is an example of where I get frustrated with the show. We're going to call out, first of all, just to drill home the fact of how scattered the plotting is on the show, and then also the idea of where are these storylines going. So let's start with Mel. So Mel now has to deal with them building a wall on her property. First of all, wakes up, can't sleep because of the hot flash she's having. And get an estrogen patch, lady. Come on, go see your doctor already.
Seriously, just go to the doctor. Don't worry about the vaginal rejuvenation. Just go get your hormones in order.
Yes. My wife was having crazy hot flashes for like a year straight. And she started taking a estrogen patch. I'm revealing a lot of information here. I hope she's okay with all this.
She's pretty open about it from my discussions with her.
She brought it up on the Pit conversation as well, briefly, because of we were watching it in tandem with this show. But yeah, it's like instantaneously she is like no longer having hot flashes. So it's like, Mel, just go talk to somebody about this, please, so you can sleep at night. And I can sleep at night too, because it was very problematic when she was waking up in the middle of the night, sweating through the sheets as well.
Oh, poor thing.
So Mel, she handed the neighbor a bag of poop, and now they are making her life difficult by having these construction workers building up a wall. She should be happy that they're building this wall between them. Like, like she says, strong walls make strong, or strong fences.
Good fences make good neighbors.
Good neighbors, exactly. So yes. So you know what? Put up the wall and accept the fact that if you don't want their dog wandering onto your property, then yeah, they're going to put something up between the two of you. Fine. And I also think that the neighbor's reaction of being be angry at her for the way she addressed this. I mean, she did try to, I felt like the show was trying to make her look like she's being erratic in this, the way she dealt with this. And maybe slightly she was dealing with it, and a little, she could have dealt with it a little more nicely. But she did have the conversation multiple times with them about the dog. Like, what is, but I feel like the show is expecting us to side with the neighbor a little bit. Like she was a little out of hand. I don't know. Like, I don't read it that way at all. And like I said, I'm like, hey, it'll be noisy for a little while, but then I'll have that wall up. And I don't like those people anyway, so I don't care if I don't get to see them anymore.
Yeah, I think I'm skipping ahead a little here, but with the Sam storyline as well, I think this show is just not guessing where people's sympathies are going to lie. It's not guessing it properly.
Sam is very excited by the fact that, again, in the show, that we touched on this last week too, the show seems to be empathetic to Sam's situation. And I guess I think that's what you're touching on right here.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then we have her showing up, and she's like, hey, I can do something for you. I can actually get you a job. And they're like, oh, wow, that's so great that you thought of me. Okay, let bygones be bygones. Mel, and this does circle back to the Mel situation. Mel, you got to let things go because we all want to move on. And I don't know what the timeline is here.
Who cares if she frames somebody for murder?
Yeah, just let bygones be bygones. Like, what are you talking about? Look, she's dating Ash now. First of all, it's like, even if you're being polite, and this is part of my irritation, nobody behaves this way, right? Like, even if people are thinking this, the whole idea that they're going to suddenly pressure Mel a week after they were like, we never want to see that lady again. And now they're pressuring Mel to let bygones be bygones because she has a good relationship with, she gave one of them a connection for a job. It's just, nobody talks this way. Maybe they would say that about Mel, well, maybe we should think about that. And boy, that was really awkward, but I don't want to pressure Mel into forgiving her, or I'm going to do this thing. Mel's going to be mad. So I'm going to take the job and just do it behind her back. Those are all things that would happen in real. None of this would happen the way it played out here. It's crazy. Oh, and by the way, and then she gets drunk because Sam is there. And then her daughter calls an Uber for her. And the daughter's just like, you're such a mess, Mom. It's like, what are you talking about? There's a lot of crap going on right now. She's supposed to just be cool about everything? I don't
Seriously.
None of it. And by the way, again, I feel there's a more interesting version of this, that the fact that, guess what, teenage daughter, when you get to be an adult, life is still equally messy, maybe even more messy. And you get to see that man, this is a really bad situation and my mom's in it. And I thought this type of crap only happened in high school, but it's actually still happening. And I guess it always is this way. That is interesting to be because we all go through that phase in our lives where you realize that your parents are just equally flawed people, that nothing gets fixed as you get older. It's just more of the same. And, your priorities change, obviously, and your experiences change, but it's always kind of more of the same type of thing. That's an interesting revelation. The show's not saying that. The show's just like, Mom, you're a mess. Mel, you got to get your stuff together. I'm like, what are you talking about? Come on, people. And it's frustrating, like you said. And I can only imagine if you're a woman that I'm watching it and it's just irritating characterization because it's not realistic. But I'm sure as a woman, you're saying that no woman would act this way. I mean, I assume that's how you read those scenes. Do you think that this is how your friend group would act if?
First of all, I have a problem with the whole friend group, as we discussed last week. Maybe this is just my own memory, but it's they've created this cast of women as kind of like a chorus for Mel. but I don't think any of them are developed enough for me to have like a distinct recollection. Like even in this episode, I was like, those are the lesbians. Okay, got it. Because I know there's a lesbian in there, but I wasn't sure which one it was. Like, I just don't even understand. They picked too many. That group is too big. That group should be cut by half.
For sure.
So I could actually keep track of who's who and associate some personality traits with them, maybe, other than just being like a chorus. So that's my first problem. And I can't even remember the question you asked me now.
I was just saying, like, as a woman, do you buy that this is like, I'm watching it and for me, it's just the writing, I think, is illogical from a character perspective, period. But I was saying, like, would you expect like your girlfriends to behave this way? Even if they're, for example, going to take this job, they might be like, well, we're going to do this behind Mel's back. We're going to meet with this person behind her back. The whole pressure campaign in the moment, for me, it just felt like, would anyone behave this way? And is it more irritating as a woman to watch that?
As I mentioned, none of this is resonating for me. So I guess what I mean when I say that is like, I don't feel, obviously there are many people who have had life experiences that I haven't had, but there is generally some commonality in emotions. And when you see a situation, you can think, oh, that's similar to how I felt when this other dissimilar thing, but analogous, happened to me. None of this is working to me.
Yeah, understandably. So we got digressed just on the Mel part of it, but we touched on the Sam part of it. Here's the crazy irony of it. The Sam character, I like her a lot more this season not because I think that she's an excellently written character, but it's understandable that this woman who's like had a really bad stretch now is in this near fantasy version of a relationship. She was in a terrible loveless marriage with her previous husband, or with her, ex-husband, and now is in this kind of, and it could all it may all fall apart on her, almost certainly will. But in the moment, this kind of ideal rich guy, the richest guy in town, who wants her, who seems to really have feelings for her, wants to meet her kids. And her answer of being like, look, this is going to be a lot to give the kids. Can we give them a little more time? Basically, my point, and even how thrilled she is that I don't want to go to that party tonight, but then it actually gives her a connect, and the fun sex scene they have afterwards as like a thank you for him having brought her there. And even going back to their pizza date last week, even though the idea that the town is supposed to forgive Sam is ridiculous, granted, she's maybe my favorite written character because her, if you've fallen this far down and someone's giving you a hand up and you're really enjoying the ride, that is a character I completely understand. And it's completely believable, everything that's happened with her in this season of the show.
That's fair.
I mean, I'm not saying that she's a great character in general, but I mean, at least she's a character that behaves in a way that is recognizable as human behavior, is just all I'm trying to say. It's a low threshold, but it's how it is. And Tori, so she's living with her dad. Anything else going on? She's not dating anyone now. It doesn't seem to be. She doesn't want to go to school. Anything else happened with Tori this week? This weekend, Tori?
I think there was mainly the bed rotting and the interactions between her and Mel. By the way, did she take that other girl's spot on the tennis team and now she doesn't even want to go to Princeton?
I think that's possibly the case, which is crazy, but that's
really obnoxious. I hope that other girl was able to get her spot somehow once she declined.
No, she's like in another school. She accepted a different school. Remember, we had that.
Yeah, I know, but
unless she was like waitlisted,
yeah, right.
It's possible that. But this is the type of show that if that's the case, it would have absolutely told us that. Maybe that's the thing that motivates her, right? Tori finds out that she's coming back to get her slot, and she's like, "No,
maybe
that's my slot."
Maybe.
Oh, that's what I wanted to bring up before I forget. The lesbian couple you mentioned, I just want to shout out that the wife, who's like in a lot of shots but doesn't speak much dialogue, by the way.
Yeah.
The like tall red head woman, that is John Hamm's actual wife, real world wife.
I mean, I still feel like John Hamm kind of screwed over Jennifer Westfeldt, even though I have zero insight into their relationship. So I'm a little conflicted about that.
Well, I mean, yes. It's funny because I was randomly stumbled upon that piece of information And then I looked at when they got married and then the previous relationship ending. And I'm like, oh, wait a second. Was this like, were they happening at the same time? But no, I think the dates don't overlap. So I don't know
No,
anything
it's not
about
that. It's that they were together for a very,
very long
very
time.
long
Yes.
time as he got very, very popular and never got married. And then, well, anyway.
But I mean, I don't know. I don't know anything about these things, but the
Nor
only
do
thing I
I.
would add to that is that he was at the peak of his fame when he did get married. So maybe that relationship had just run its course. The reason I mentioned that, it doesn't seem to be like Tom Hanks or Kevin Costner when they had those early wives and then they divorced and then they seemed to play the field for a while because, of course, they were at the peak of their fame. John Hamm seemed to marry within a year or so of the other relationship ending. So anyway, but I don't know.
That
I don't know
more
nothing
annoying, but yeah.
I don't know anything about this.
If anyone has opinions on this, please let us know.
Yeah, let us know if you have more information about this or opinions. Yes. needssomeintroduction@gmail.com or on Spotify. That's usually where we get our comments, by the way, in Spotify. So Spotify comments or YouTube comments, of course, or on the Patreon. Who else do we want to talk about here from the female character perspective before we get into like the real meat of the episode? Still walking around.
Well, there's the slowest version of Blitzkrieg Bop I've ever heard in my life.
Yes, Allie. Oh my God. So yes, Allie is trying to. What do you think they're indicating there? Like do you think that means that she's going to lose it at some point, or what are they even trying to do with this plot at all?
I feel like this is supposed to be some sort of development of this character finding her path, and she's going to somehow fall in love with teaching and connect with some of these students, and it's going to compel her to care for her mental health in a way that she hasn't in the past. But I could be wrong.
The reason I'm wary of that, at first I did think that it would be some kind of School of Rock version of this where she befriends one of the students. I feel like at this point, at least one of the characters, one of those student characters, has to be fleshed out in some way. And unfortunately, the only time she's interacted with like anyone in that classroom is that same student.
That jerk in the back.
Yeah. And it seems like, if anything, that is going to be a problematic relationship for her, or not a positive one. So that's why I worry that that's just going to be another downfall for her again. What did you make of the scene where she and Coop and the dad all meet at the bar? I actually liked the scene. I liked the whole idea.
Marginally liked it. I didn't feel like, oh, that was so great, but I did like it.
I don't think that like any of the dialogue was great, or that I just liked seeing them together. And I like this idea of the mom is so utterly insufferable.
Yes,
I like I like the idea of the dad being like, the only way I can have a relationship with my kids is to not include your mom, which is a kind of interesting character dynamic.
Yeah, I like that also.
And of course, he says to Coop also, like, how are things going with you? I'm worried about you. And again, here's an opportunity for him to reveal anything about what's going on in his mind. And it's just, the show's just like, we're not interested in that. I'm like, we are interested in that. I want to, like, it's as if we're watching Breaking Bad. And at no point are we like, we do not care about Walter White's interiority at all. I'm like, yes, we do. That's why everybody watched that show.
What I'm not as interested in, sorry to say, is hearing Allie sing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I like her singing, but yes, I do agree that they just lean into that.
It just feels like it's time that could be spent somewhere else.
I was going to move on to the core plot, but then of course I have to also bring up Elena again, another female character that's probably underwritten here on the show, and maybe the most fleshed out and still not great, to be honest. What did you think about her? Again, as far as a character who at least makes sense in the show, or their actions make sense in the show.
Agree.
You have her being like, hey, Coop, yeah, finally in episode 4, let's do a little cat burglaring. And he gets interrupted in the middle of this and has to run off. And Elena's like, what are you doing? We need to make money.
She was totally right about, well, just grab anything. You're looking at 1,000 valuable things. Just grab one.
Yeah, he's sitting there going like, oh, there's that $50,000 Leica camera or whatever that he bought. Here's this thing. But I'm looking for the $200,000 fake violin that he's probably thrown in the garbage for all we know, right? Which is a great target. But like, yeah, if he's like, I only want that one thing, that's the only thing that's worth it for me. It's like, hey, she needs to pay her bills too. Just grab the $50,000 camera. If he has like 5 digital cameras and he doesn't find that one, he'll be like, I could have sworn I had that. Where did I leave?
Yeah.
Did I leave it at did I leave it at the barbecue?
Yeah.
Like, where did I give it away? What did I do with that camera? Just grab it and give it to her and be like, this isn't enough for everybody, but here, go pawn this and you get $40,000. Right. So I think she'd be happy to have it. Got to tell you.
I wonder if they're setting up like she's going to be driven to do something.
She's going to start cat burglaring herself.
More drastic because she can't count on him.
Inevitably, it has to be that way because that's what's so crazy about this. The idea that he's trying to get a commission, even if you think like he's not going to get the commission, it looks like Ash is saying, I'm going to cut you out of this commission. So even if that's the case, that he's still just from going back with Excelsior. As a matter of fact, this might be a minor spoiler, but I could be completely wrong about this, but not even a spoiler, honestly. But the description of next week's episode is that Coop and what's his name? His former boss, Corbin Burnson's character, I forget his name now. Gary? Is it Gary?
Anyway, I am not sure.
The Corbin Burnson character and Coop are on that private plane and they're going to Scandinavia, making that flight that they didn't make at the end of season 1, which is another irritation for me, by the way, that we just ended up there again 4 episodes later to salvage that deal. And Coop could do the same thing where it's like, you got to give me 10% of that deal or 20% of that deal and I'll come with you. The reason I say all this is the idea that he's like, well, now I have to steal these things because these other people are depending on me, but he's still going to make tens of millions of dollars on this deal on doing his old job. Then yeah, the cat burglaring is, it may scratch some itch he has internally, but he doesn't need the cash anymore, right? And if that's the case, then like, yeah, help her out or grab the camera and hook her up or whatever. Like it just doesn't make sense what he's doing here at all. And they don't explain it. It's not like he's just like, no, I have to be perfect at this. He hasn't been perfect at anything he's done so far. It's just really pretty crazy where we are on the show. And of course, we have Barney's wife who tells Mel that she's pregnant. I like the whole thing, like kids, they suck. They ruin everything. Mm-hmm. I'm pregnant. Oh, that's great.
Never mind.
Yeah, that was actually kind of funny. I also like the making fun of why are you training your kids to ride horses? Like, what are they going to do with this skill? Is this a useful skill at all? By the way, I never understood these like really, really expensive things. My wife had horse riding lessons when she was young. And of course, doesn't do anything with horse riding at all. And not only that, but then when our daughter was born, that we have multiple members of the family on their side being like, we're thinking about getting her horse riding lessons. And I'm like, she's not getting horse riding lessons. Like, you're going to take that money and put it into a college fund or something. Like, that is the most ridiculous waste of cash I could possibly imagine. First of all, it's probably cruel to the horses, although I haven't thought about that. I just think it's an incredible waste of money. Like, if you're going to spend money on anything, horse riding is not the thing to spend your money.
Well, I have thought about it, and I do have ethical issues about horseback riding. But I will say, as somebody whose husband grew up in upstate New York, partly in the country, he did grow up riding horses. I think not as a status thing, because it certainly was not like a very upper class neighborhood, but they just all did. And he does really, really enjoy riding horses. And I think even when we grew up in our high school, there was kind of this subgroup. Were you aware of this? Of people who rode horses together?
Yeah, there was a horse. I remember it. Near Eagle Rock, there was an actual horse ranch. I think it's still there, although it's not operational. We can still drive past it. And I remember seeing the horses, like walking, I should say, along the highway, like going from one location to the other. Specifically, though, you make a really good point. I rode horses when I was younger because my grandfather had horses. So that is very different to be like, you grew up riding a horse. These people are not
as a status thing.
These people are like, my kid is going to learn equestrian. I'm like, yeah, good luck with that.
There is a difference between equestrian activities and just like, here's a horse, it'll be fun to ride it. Yeah, that's true.
Exactly. Yes. And I wouldn't mind that at all, by the way. If you have an actual operational horse ranch and some of the older horses, for example, that aren't like working anymore. And the kids get to ride them around or like even spend this, a summer camp feeding the horses and grooming the horses and taking care of them. I'm totally fine with that. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the whole put on this pointy hat and like make make your horse dance around the. I'm like, what is this? How is this going to help you with your life at any point?
Fair.
At least like do like polo or something. You can learn a sport. I mean, I don't know, but yes, I just seem very silly to me, in my opinion. I'm sure people have different opinions of it, and of course, it's a cultural thing. I'm sure generationally, intergenerationally, there are people who grew up with this, and of course, they want to pass that on. Okay, so to the heart of the matter, we have that. What do you make of the Ash being totally erratic here? Do you think that's what do you think the show is trying to set up with him?
I think this was trying to set up that his character has a dark side, which we kind of knew. I guess a dark side that is a little unpredictable. We knew that he's capable of blackmailing Coop, right? So we do have some idea that he's not fully a good guy, but I think they're trying to set up that he can be a little bit unpredictable, a little bit erratic, and that can be dangerous.
What do you think? What do you make of him trying to have that olive branch? Not an olive branch, I guess. He's just trying to do the try hard thing that he always seems to do here, even with his daughter. But now with Sam and the drone for the boys. What did you make of all that?
Yeah, I thought it was an interesting insight into his character that we learned his wife got sick, because there was a little part of me that thought maybe he murdered her.
Yes, I still do think so, by the way.
Yeah, this is assuming he's telling the truth. I don't like that he said he always wanted a boy. Coming back to this theme of developing women and those types of characters.
It's like the show is saying that. I wish these were all boys.
Yeah, I wish I could have a show full of men, but they won't let me. So I'm just going to shortchange all the female characters' development. So yeah, I didn't love that about him. But I do generally like his relationship with Sam. As I mentioned last week, I think they have a really good chemistry.
Yes, I actually really like them together. And in general, not in this episode, but in general, I really do like when Ash and Coop are together. And I really like when Ash and Sam are together. And I like seeing very different aspects of Ash. And that's what, I mean, it's in the performance. It's in the way the characters are written for sure. We, meanwhile, have an interior. This is me being critical again of the show. We have this interior monologue of the Coop character. And I do not know. I have to assume, based on the interior monologue and his behavior, that he's a sociopath. But then we see him loving on his kids. So I'm like, okay, he's not a sociopath. But if
sociopaths can love their kids.
That's true, I guess. So it's like so he really comes off as a sociopath, as opposed to the Ash character, where we don't have an interior monologue going on, but seeing him have this threatening in one moment and then conniving and manipulative and obviously very successful and not wanting to talk about his past, but
his
then
import-export business.
Right. And then being very loving and caring and trying so hard to win over Sam. That makes him an interesting character. And as opposed to some of these, like you said, these female characters where it's just like, it's none of this is compelling in any way. So the characters are very uneven in the way they're written and performed, of course. But even, I mean, the criticism I have here is beyond the female characters. I feel like the show has trouble explaining Coop's actions, and it doesn't know how to convince us. So they kind of just skirt over them. But like I said, because it's so erratic and they don't explain anything, I really start feeling like this guy's just crazy. He's just insane, I think.
Yeah, it is a super fun premise that they're working with. But I think that that premise can only take you so far before you have to start exploring, well, why is this situation existing? What is it about this character that is compelling him to do these things? And they seem to be purposefully avoiding that conversation.
Okay, so the big theme of the episode, and maybe we can end here, and I have a couple of theories that we can explore as well. But the big one, of course, is the Seder scene. The Passover is about this celebration of the Israelites, the Jewish people, escaping enslavement, right? and their trials and tribulations, right? Of all the different plagues that befell them, right? And they shout them out, right? People go around the room and they say a couple important things. And tell me if you read this the same way. The last plague, of course, is the death of the firstborn, right?
I thought that was interesting too.
Mm-hmm. And it is shouted out by Ash, of course. And Ash is like, here, sit next to me, Coop, right? So, of course, I think that is very important. And the show's drawing attention to it. So what did you make of that? I was trying to theorize who are the firstborn. Tori, of course, is Coop's firstborn. So, she's obviously in trouble in some way. Is that a threat against Ash? I'm sorry, by Ash against Tori? I was just thinking Coop is the firstborn. So is that, anyway, how do you read all of that?
My mind went to Tori. And sadly, I don't want anything bad to happen to her, but I wouldn't mind if we didn't see her again.
But it's okay if we got rid of her.
Well, we can't send her off to college. We've established she's not going to college. So, and I didn't really think about it too far beyond that, except to think, well, Ash just has the one daughter. So
right.
I didn't really think about each of the men and their status.
I did. I mean, at first I was thinking, my immediate thought was Tori, of course. But then I'm like, wait a second, we do see the family unit together, I should say.
It's a fair point, yeah.
Coop with his sister. And of course, it's just like a reminder to the show of that pecking order. Because
Is that his younger sister? I don't remember.
I actually Googled it before this conversation to be sure. And apparently, according to the Google search Gemini, it had a link to the Wikipedia. It's funny that the Gemini is referencing Wikipedia. But anyway, in Wikipedia, quotes Allie, the younger sister. So, yeah, so Allie is his younger sister. So he is the firstborn.
Gotcha.
And which, of course, is possibly the person who's being threatened here. That makes a lot more sense. But my immediate thought was Tori, because I was thinking, I mean, this is me incepting this into my own mind. But of course, there's all the movie references here. And Night of the Hunter, where the kids are stalked by this serial killer, is a big reference point. We see scenes from it in episode 1 or 2 of the show. So anyway, it's been referenced already. So I was immediately thinking about the children, but then I'm like, well, probably Coop is the firstborn. He's the one who's most at risk here, potentially. But then, of course, there's also the fact that, and this is a broader question, but I do wonder if Ash is possibly in trouble too, because it's very easy to see. I wondered
too, as we were discussing this.
Yeah, because you do wonder, Ash, and Ash's wife may have died under mysterious circumstances. I mean, we know that he has some kind of medical background. She got sick, is what he says, but we don't know all the context of what that is. There might have been something that, led to that sickness, or, maybe it's like an illness based on, it all remains to be seen. But the point is that maybe something already bad happened to his wife because of his activities, and maybe he's under duress again, and maybe that's why he was acting so erratically. Maybe he's being pressured by somebody else, right?
Right.
Okay, and then the big so let me close that loop first. And of course, so we near the beginning of the episode, we have the invitation to the Seder. We see the Seder, big aspect of the show, and then at the end, we the whole idea of the Seder is a celebration of freedom. And he overtly says at the end, or somewhat, references the fact, Coop that is, that he's not free, right? So he thought he was free of this money world he was in, and he's still actually trapped by it. Some of that is of his own making, but he's not self-aware enough to understand that. He's now back in bed with the same people he was trying to escape from. And of course, all of this under duress, because he's actually being blackmailed by Ash. So I did think that that's an interesting point for the episode to land. So it is tying that all together, that Coop is not free. A celebration of freedom at the beginning of the episode, but he is not free at all. But of course, I've said this 100 times, but a lot of that is his own lack of awareness that he has entrapped himself, because there are things he can do, like don't drive an $800,000 car if you really want to be financially free of all these shackles.
Agree.
And of course, the last big thing here I want to talk about is my ongoing theory that I think I'm going to continue to investigate. I have a feeling, I've had these theories on every episode, pretty much every show we've covered here, because a lot of these are thrillers or mysteries. And I have a feeling that this show is just not well written. And some of what I'm trying to connect the dots here is not going to pay off. But
not connectable.
Right. But I still am going to make my,
prediction.
Put my prediction out there, my theory, because, and I think this would be more satisfying, which is, of course, I've mentioned there's movie references here. One of the posters in his house that we've seen in the background a couple of times is this thing. And I do keep thinking about how many coincidences there are here that he is now back on that plane trying to save that deal with the same people. We're circling all the way back to the end of season 1. And potentially, here's my theory, potentially this is all a sting operation where, the Corbin Burnson character maybe even caught him red-handed on a video camera or something stealing that print. So that's how he knew he was a cat burglar. And now this billionaire shows up in their neighborhood. He gets burgled. There's a video of it again. How did he know that he was going to burgle his house? And now that has all led him to take this money and invest it into creating these shell companies to siphon potentially $1 billion offshore of his own money. And now I started thinking, my wheel's still spinning based on that theory from last week. And I'm like, what if Corbin Burnson is setting him up? Because once those shell companies are all set up, maybe he's going to funnel his own money. Maybe let's say that the actual, what's it called? Excalibur or whatever? Excelsior. The Excelsior fund is like a Ponzi scheme or something. And now Coop is going to create all these shell companies to funnel out this $1 billion as part of a way to, funnel in this money, this illicit money. But what if it's also going to be used to funnel out the Corbin Burnson's funds? And then when the money disappears, they're going to frame Coop for it because Coop's already a criminal.
Interesting.
So that's my operating theory right now. But I think I may have thought about this more than the writers of the show have. Possibly.
Probably already, yes.
So, but anyway, we'll see if I'm right about that or not. All right, Sona, that I think, anything else before we wrap up? Is there anything else you wanted to bring up or anything else you might have watched along the way that you wanted to shout out?
The only thing that I need to have said on the record, there's 2 things. One is that I want it known that I used to work in the building that Corbin Burnson works in now.
Oh, wow, nice.
Yeah, so that was nice to see. The second is, let me circle back to Imperfect Women.
Yes. Yes. So, the show Imperfect Women. I thought you meant the imperfect women on this show.
No, the Apple TV show,
yes.
Imperfect Women, which I continue to watch despite my better judgment. I will say, I had mentioned before that my understanding is the show is broken up in the same way the book is, with a couple of episodes devoted to each of the 3 main female characters. And we are now in the final female character's viewpoint, Elizabeth Moss. I think her character's name is Mary. And I will say that it must be a testament to Elizabeth Moss's acting that this part of the show is riveting.
Oh, great. That's good.
So for anyone who, I guess, has made it this far into Imperfect Women, I really do see an improvement. And I think I'm attributing the improvement to Elizabeth Moss because it's all the same book, right? With the same author. So it doesn't feel accurate. That part could be so much better written than the other 2 parts.
Yeah.
I know it was translated to a screenplay and all that, I'm sure. So it's not quite like a literal translation of the book. But still, the drastic improvement, I guess, could only be due to that. I have to answer the phone. Hold on 1 second.
Sure. So that's interesting. I probably won't circle back to it at this point, but we'll see.
Understood.
But I'm good to know for anybody who has maybe watched half of the show and then quit or something, that it gets better as it goes along. So that's a good to hear. And I mean, it seems like you're saying it improved throughout its run, right?
Yeah, I do think it improved throughout, which kind of hurts to say because I'm a big Kerry Washington fan, even though I do understand the criticisms of her acting and that she can be one note. For whatever reason, I really love her. But this was not the best vehicle for her, I don't think. And we're very close to the end now and finding out who the murderer is. And I feel like I will be able to form a final opinion on how good or bad this show on, depending on how it ends out.
When you get to the end, we will have a spoiler conversation where you could just spoil the show for me. And obviously, anybody who has watched or doesn't care can listen in on that. But I think we are just a couple weeks away, right?
Yeah, maybe even just 1 week away. I'm not sure.
Okay. Yeah, maybe that's correct, because there's a show that I do plan to watch with Matthew Reese in it, and also from one of my favorite TV directors / show creators, Miro Harai, he's like had an incredible batting average. The Bear, Station 11, Dave, the HBO series, Atlanta, like basically all his shows have just been some of my favorite comedies of the past X number of years. So he has a show that's premiering next week called Widow's Bay. And usually with Apple, the week that a previous show ends, they'll premiere the next one. So it does make sense that probably next week is the finale of Imperfect Women and then the premiere of Widow's Bay. So anyway, maybe we'll discuss it next week if that's the case.
Sounds good.
And I just want to bring up again, I'll talk about it more on the podcast when we talk about Euphoria, which is the next episode. But Margot's Got Money Troubles is now 4 episodes in and very fun, a lot of fun. She's now has her OnlyFans, and really interesting to watch that show in a counterpoint to Euphoria, where Euphoria's theme this year is sex work. And it's like the scuzziest, worst, disgusting version of it. And in Margot's Got Money Troubles, ends up in it's the world she lives in that unfortunately not pressures her, but corners her into fact to making the decision to get into sex work. But for her, it's not a negative thing. It's like actually empowering. Mm-hmm. So it's very interesting. These two shows that are set in California that are, dealing with people who are getting into OnlyFans sex work, and that it is coming at it from very different perspectives simultaneously. But it's been very entertaining so far. And yeah, so if anybody's sampling that, I'll definitely probably be covering it in greater detail as we go forward. And Sona, I recommend it for you. The episodes are about 30 minutes. Some of the earlier episodes were a little longer, like 40 minutes. Now they're about 30 minutes. So pretty easy to catch up on if you want to check that out.
Cool.
All right, Sona, thank you again for the conversation. And we'll see if this show gets better. I do hope it's still watchable, but I mean,
it's still entertaining.
I agree. As negative as all the things I said, I think analyzing the show is tough because it makes me see all the flaws, but it is I mean, the premise is so compelling. I keep watching it. So what are we going to do?
Yeah. And by the way, they did throw in a little secret. We always talk about how, it's such an unexplored idea that they could be he could be discovering his neighbor's secrets.
Yes.
While he's burglarizing their homes. And they did throw in a little of that with the Ozempic and filler refrigerator.
Yes, that seems like it's going to pay off in some way. That's true. Yeah. Interesting.
Not the most scandalous secret you could discover, but interesting.
I know. Yeah. I mean, it just feels like they're setting something up there, but for sure. But like you said, does not seem to be like the most egregious thing going on in that neighborhood by us.
Right. It's not like, they're running a secret prostitution ring. That would be interesting.
Or they're making meth in the basement or something.
It's been done.
Yeah, that's been done many times before. All right. And then we'll find out what's all going on. And if there is some grander scheme, we'll know soon enough, I think.
We'll find out.
Oh, and before next week, yes. So that'll be before next week. Anybody's watching Imperfect Women, I think the finale's next week. And anybody who wants to sample Widow's Bay, maybe I'll bring it up next week as well. All right, Sona, thank you again for the conversation.
Thank you. Talk to you soon.